Well, some schools in New Brunswick are installing some pretty high-tech sensors in their bathrooms as a way to dissuade students from vaping. The Halo units can detect the difference between vaping and smoking. They can even pick up sounds like yelling or fighting. Darla Day is Director of Schools for the Fredericton Education Centre in ASD West. She's involved in overseeing the installation of these devices in schools that are asking for them. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So tell me, if you can, a little bit about the issue that schools are having here. I mean, to some degree, it's an old problem. There's a Motley Crue song from the 80s about it. But how has vaping changed what's going on in bathrooms?
I would say that vaping has changed things a little bit as opposed to time gone by where there may have been some cigarette smoking in bathrooms. The vaping seems to be a more current thing that our teenagers and also adults are using. They're a little easier to conceal, and it's a popular thing these days amongst our teens, although we would say that it's not a healthy practice, and it's certainly not something we would promote. One thing that is different is that there seems to be more of this happening actually inside the school as opposed to outside the school. Bathrooms would be a common place where students are congregating, and they seem to be using these vape devices. That being said, we have also seen them a small amount in hallways or in common areas of the school. This is not something that's permitted. It's like smoking a cigarette or alcohol. It's not permitted inside the building, and it's not something that we condone or want happening inside our buildings.
Right. What are you hearing about the schools that are interested in installing this kind of device?
Well, I can tell you that in our school district, we would have 12 schools at this time that have some Halo device detectors that are vape detectors. And in total, there would be in excess of 40 of these spread across those 12 schools in each of our 3 education centers. So there's quite a variety. There's a mix of rural schools and more what we would call populated inner city schools or some of our larger high schools. They do tend to be mainly in the high schools. There are a couple middle schools and then a couple K to 12 that actually have these devices installed. There are a lot of benefits to them, and more than just in terms of detecting the vape, but that would be the primary reason for the installation of them. And a number of these schools have had them for a couple of years or more, and some of them are expressing their interest in trying it out.
What can you tell me about how they work and what they can detect? Because it is more than just vape, right?
Yes, it is, yeah. And in actual fact, a lot of the schools are finding what I call the secondary benefits of the vape detector to be a little more of use than the vape itself because of the type of thing it will detect. So they are an electronic device that are usually attached to the ceiling, usually encaged. The software is attached to internal surveillance camera systems that are set up, security systems within the school. Schools do have security systems. There are no cameras inside bathrooms because that's not allowed, but it's not uncommon to have camera systems out into the hallways, on doors, and key areas for security purpose. The vape detectors are linked to that. They are also linked electronically through to school administration's computers and cell phones and that type of thing. So an administrator would receive an alert that goes off on their devices, whether it's a laptop computer or their phone, or perhaps they have an electronic watch that allows these alerts to come in. And it's very specific. It will say a time, a date, a location, and what the alert is. So if it's vaping, it'll detect vape. But the other secondary benefits that schools are finding besides the vaping, there are a whole plethora of other types of detections that can come up, such as vandalism would be a big one. So if there's vandalism happening, the vape detector has a way of detecting those loud noises and sounds if something's being tampered with or destroyed. They can also detect a cry for help, THC or marijuana use, carbon monoxide alerts, and other types of gases. So there are other types of alerts that can come through that schools can have the ability to respond to. And what we're finding is in doing this, it is reducing the vaping, but it's also reducing the amount of vandalism. And in some cases, if there's something happening inside the bathroom that it shouldn't and someone's calling for help, that can be detected as well through the sound mechanism inside the device.
It sounds like quite the piece of technology, really. How costly are these Halo systems?
Well, they do come with a cost. Approximately, they're about $2,204 to install, and that includes the device itself, the Ethernet connection, and then the installation. And the installation can vary depending on the level of difficulty with the ceiling, if it needs to go through concrete walls, those types of things. But approximately just over $2,000 to install.
And is that something that the district is paying for at this time?
The district is investing in this and paying, but we also are getting the schools to cost share that a bit. But it is an investment that the school district is making because we do see its value and its purpose.
You say some of these schools have had these items for as long as 2 years. So what kind of feedback are you getting? What are you hearing from them?
Well, we're certainly, there are some schools that have had these for a couple years at least, yes, and what we're finding out is that it does have a benefit and it is reducing some things, but school administration does need to think very carefully the logistics behind it, because as you can imagine, these alerts would be going off quite frequently, or they can. So it's to figure out what can they reasonably respond to, and then what is the response. So in terms of trying to work through whatever the issue is in the bathroom, and another thing that's happening in tandem with these vapes is that a lot of schools are trying to focus on the education piece to reduce vaping. So some schools have programs that are focused on an education piece to hope that students cut back on vaping and smoking of cigarettes and also the THC use. So that's also an important part that needs to go in tandem. It's not just about responding in a reactive mode, but also a proactive mode with the education side of things.
You mentioned, of course, that there are no cameras inside of washrooms. I'm just curious if any privacy concerns have been raised about these sort of monitoring systems.
Yes, we have had some inquiries from parents about our camera systems, but the camera systems have been in place for a very long time in schools, and they are set up for security use. So they're not something that's monitored at all times, but they're there if something were to happen. And so there definitely are no camera systems inside washrooms, but they would be, or classrooms. They're in the main hallways and not focused on the doors coming in and out, mainly for security purposes. If something were to ever happen, a break-in, vandalism, an intruder, those types of things. However, it's something where administrators would be able to see students who are going in and out of the hallways just like they can be seen going in and out of classrooms. So that part of it has been the clarity of these camera systems is a little better or a little superior to the regular system that's in place. So it's easier to identify individuals, I guess, with this Halo system.
Okay. Given the interest that you've seen so far in these Halo systems, do you foresee this becoming a bigger trend, maybe even something the Department of Education could implement on a wider basis?
I think it could be. I know right now it's certainly something that a number of schools are trying and piloting. It would be a big investment on the part of the department, but I think it would be a good investment. The piece of advice that I would have is that school administration does need to think carefully about logistically how they're going to manage this and what kind of a communication they're going to put out to their school community in terms of how they're going to respond and what this device is for and what it's actually doing and the benefits of it.
Really interesting. This is the first I've heard of them. So thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.